And now we are live. Oh, gosh. Emma Cox, I am so glad to welcome you once again for our preview to Emma Explores. Each week, I have you diving in and going into that closet of Emma's family stories and pulling them out. And for next week, you have a fun one ready for us. So tell us about that.
Well, as you say, I'm really fortunate. I have lots and lots of different stories. And this is one I've been looking forward to for quite a while because it's one of the people in it is somebody I sort of feel like I identify with quite closely. And it's somebody that I've always thought he's interesting and finding out more about him. And I have talked about him in the past. So basically, his name was Edward William Cox, and he's my two times great grandfather. And he was a publisher in London. And I knew some of the bits and pieces about him, but I hadn't found out a lot. I'd done my family history in 1,000 words, including him. And I thought there's an opportunity to find out more about the sort of books that he published and the magazines and newspapers and things like that and how he got into it. So I've basically been doing a bit more research on him. And then I wanted to know, well, what happened to his business? Because I know that his nephew Horace took it over, but there were other people that were involved as well, which I didn't realize. And I found some more sources for this one. So there's new sources that I hadn't come across before. And they were saying, oh, there's this surname. It's like, that's one of my surnames. Okay, I'll go and have a look at that one. Oh, they were a publisher. Oh, they did that. They're an editor. They were a journalist and they worked on that magazine. And it's like, I haven't heard of that magazine. And it's been telling me about lots and lots of different things. And it was interesting to sort of see he basically set up the business. It ran for several years. He started off as a lawyer. He wasn't necessarily the person you would have actually thought of as the most logical person to be a publisher. But he started with a publication called the Law Times because he felt there was a need for people in the legal profession to actually have the latest news. And so he provided it, and it made him a lot of money. And he basically did this, and then he did something called The Field. And then there's various other magazines and newspapers and publications that came out of different ones, different sort of like columns and things like that, which were then given their own they were basically made independent is probably the best way of actually describing it. Some succeeded, some didn't, and it's interesting to see which did and which didn't, and the type of topics that they covered. And I've actually got I've got so much stuff from my ancestors. I've got my great uncle's things, and he basically he was my grandfather's brother, and he acted as executors on various wills. So, and he had lots and lots of family papers and things. And in there, I've got the centenary editions of a couple of the magazines that started off being published by Edward William Cox a few years ago. And
so tell me the dates. Yeah, exactly. So the grandfather must have been late 19th century, early 20th century, and your great grandfather late 19th century.
So Edward William Cox was born in 1809 and he died around 1879. So he was early. So he started doing this in the 1850s, 1840s, 1850s.
Yeah.
So there was some, and people have written articles about him. And it's like something I think it was the word, he was the father of class journalism or something, was one person described as. He was interested in orchids. He basically liked spiritualism. He was the magistrate for the local county. He was very eclectic. He was definitely an entrepreneur, and he brought people to him. And he obviously moved in very interesting circles, and he knew lots of different people. And he's a fascinating character. And then it's like, well, what happened? Who took after he took on? And he had one son by his first marriage. I descend from his second marriage, but I also descend by his brother, so it gets a bit complicated. But so his son from his first marriage was involved, and then his grandson from his second marriage was involved as well. His nephew was involved, his other nephews were involved, and there's even another Emma Cox from a few generations ago. So there's all sorts of different threads.
Do you have like editorials on the topics of the day? I mean, this is like the Victorian era in amber because you've got the continuity to it. Do you have editorials?
I'm not sure that I have editorials. I have copies of some of the magazines and newspapers and things. And the British Newspaper Archive has actually got the first edition of The Field on there. They've basically digitized everything. So you can go in and actually look at the whole thing, which is about 40 pages. Now, he didn't set that up. He took it on after being going for about a year and not been terribly
Uh-huh.
successful. But he
Uh,
took it on and made it very, very successful. And
wow.
then there are various things that came off it. And things like some of the things that he published are still being published today.
Wow.
Still
And
being
that was
published
like
today.
such a golden age of print journalism. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't even think about it today that there was a morning paper and an evening paper and the ladies section and, just and as you see, what an entrepreneur in creating so many different,
Mm.
I'm sorry, but Rupert Murdoch comes to mind.
But in different ways. So where I live in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, there are old newspapers that were published where people came to take the waters. So they would actually put in there that so and so arrived. They went to this house, they stayed in this house, and then they moved on from this house, or they left. So you can actually see the details of what people wrote in these things and the advertisements and the things that were popular. And it's fascinating reading, looking back at all of these old ones.
You know, we think about we have our privacy statements at every website we visit, and they're going to know, they're going to know, they're going to know. And we have all these platforms tracking our every movement. Instead, you have newspapers reporting who had tea with whom.
Yeah, you do, literally, literally. It was amazing detail in some of these newspapers, and looking through it and seeing what kind of advertisements there were, and what people valued, and what was
Exactly.
important to them. And there's some lovely ones. The centenary editions I mentioned, one's from the 1950s and one's from the 1960s. So it's the Queen one, I think, goes through and it shows the adverts from the different periods, so in the different decades. So you can actually pick out these little ones where there's a cat in there. There's mentions of lots and lots of different things. Let's just have a quick look. There's a lion. There's lots and lots of dresses. So seeing the
Wait, wait,
fashion of the
wait.
different
I'm
dresses.
sorry. Hold on a second. Lion? There's
Yeah.
a lion I mean, there's a social event about the lion. So go on about the lion.
Well, this might be a brand that some people may have heard of.
Oh,
It's a very popular
tea.
Irish drink.
Oh, wait a minute. Drink like a liqueur.
No, a stout.
Ah, huh. Did not know that.
Yeah.
Lion coffee is anyway, go on.
Yeah. So
It's a great.
basically, there's this insatiable carnivore, is how it's described. So
Wow. Wait a minute.
mm,
The stout is an insatiable carnivore.
apparently so. Or the lion is, and it needs
It
the
needs
drink.
a stout. Ah,
Yeah.
okay. I could see that. I could see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Gee, yeah, yeah. I mean, Doctor, forgive me. I've been so excited here. I haven't properly welcomed everyone. Dr. Mary Marshall, thank you for chiming in. I know that you have some amazing artifacts. We've talked about that a few times, and we'll continue to. She's talking about her collections and knowledge about the Black newspapers in the U.S. I know your background is particularly in the Augusta, Georgia area, going on up to the eastern seaboard to New York, where you are now. Karen Ray chimes in talking about it being the social media of the day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. Definitely.
And you can see why people needed to worry about what they were wearing to go meet somebody at a cafe because, the dutiful reporters were going to be sitting there writing it all up. The economics of that. I mean, pause for a minute to think that I mean, maybe they're paid by the word. I don't, it's just breathtaking. Mama Carol, lovely to see you joining me also from California. And Bonnie Larson, Cynthia, hello. I know, Cynthia, you are quite the researcher into these kinds of publications and things as you've worked in your own, both genealogical work as well as your novels. It's just so great to see all of you joining us today on this odd day. We're still getting used to Fridays for these live sessions, but to me, it's a great relax of Fridays, to then think about the week ahead while going back a generation or two. You always have such a wonderful view of this Victorian era. Orchids? Was it a collector of orchids, or were there whole publications on the topics of orchids?
he was a collector and he had a greenhouse, and there's actually a portrait, a painting of him with his orchids, and he thought his orchids were so important he mentioned them in his will.
But they were something. So who got them? Where are they now? Somebody killed them.
Oh, I don't think the orchids would have still survived, but equally, there are other stories. So, the Queen magazine became Harper's and Queen, and then that continues to this day. And so they published articles about fashionable weddings and what people wore and things like that. And so on my Substack, my personal Substack, Emma's Substack, I have been writing about my 8 great-grandparents. So this is the next generation nearer to me. And in there's Percy Stuart Cox and Naomi Edwards' wedding and all about that. And so Queen magazine featured little sketches showing what people wore. So even the mother of the bride, and it describes them with the colours and things like that. It
Fabric
describes
types. Yeah.
fabric types, definitely. It describes the presents. It was what music was played, who played it. It talks about all the guest lists, and it's just all of this detail is in the magazine. And because he published the magazine, it meant that they got a little feature in it. So I've put all of those as part of my 8 great-grandparents.
Wow. And then, of course, depending on when different people were, okay, well, when they were married, right? Or then I suppose he also carried on. Did you noted whether he carried on to cover like their children? So therefore, uh, great, that would be your grandparents and so on, their children?
They didn't, as far as I'm aware, cover other family weddings in that magazine, but they got mentioned in other newspapers. So I have actually found newspaper articles talking about different weddings and the guest list and presents and that sort of thing. So newspapers are a brilliant resource. The British Newspaper
Yeah.
Library, it's you pay about £70 a year, and I think they've actually got an offer on at the moment. So if anyone's interested in that, it's worthwhile having a look. I think I saved about 25% on my renewal. So it's not just
Hmm.
new members. So
Yeah.
it was worth it doing that.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
have a look and see if there are any newspapers relevant to the area that
Right.
you
Right.
come from or you're interested in.
Because we have this nifty little global reach, our good friends down in Australia have tipped us off to the Trove in
Yeah.
Australia, and what an amazing resource that is, not just for Australian publications, but also British, which has been lovely. And then here in, I don't know how they cover Canada, but certainly to the United States, newspapers.com has been useful.
Yeah.
They have this gradation to Publishers Extra. So you struggle, you cough it up, you finally pay them for newspapers.com, and then they come back and say, "Oh yeah, that one? Yeah, no, you got to pay extra for that." So I've been a big fan of Elefind, which is ELEFPHIND, which has actually it's charming because it goes out to all these kinds of publications that would never be in newspapers.com and may or may not be in the what's called Chronicling America, which is a series of the newspapers that are in this is the Library of Congress. But yeah.
But newspapers, magazines, and some of them are quite specialist. So one of them is called Crockford's Clerical Review. So
Uh-huh.
basically, that was the clergy news. So basically, who was a vicar in whichever parish and where they moved to, people who died, and what was happening. And so that was quite a significant publication. The Field was for people who were into men, basically, who were interested in hunting, shooting, and fishing, and all of that sort of thing. But there's some lovely adverts in there. I've picked some of those out to show as part of the talk I'm going to be giving. But there's not just the newspapers and magazines. So he handed on to Horace. So Horace was also my great grandfather. So this is where I come down the two lines. And he ended up doing more book publishing, although he was still managing the company and things like that for a while. And then sort of various of the magazines continued, some were sold and carried on. But then looking at the book side of it, I found some amazing books. And there's one here, I'll just find the name of it. I'll just quote it to you.
I'm
It's
still worried
called,
about an English bulldog named Horace, but I'm distracted.
it's called The Speaking Parrots, and it's
Oh,
coloured plates. Speaking Parrots. And actually, I've got a beautiful picture of it. It's a beautiful illustrated cover, and it's on sale for $350. So, yes, an
Oh,
investment.
a stretch goal. You could get actually a speaking parrot would probably cost you more than that. Those giant macaws, the beautiful macaw,
Yeah,
they're not cheap
no,
if you want to buy one.
and they
Because
need
I
a
think
decent aviary to be in as well.
oh well, of course, yeah, that would set you back more than the $300 as well. But then you have to have the decent aviary in the conservatory with your orchids. Um
Well, not sure that they would get on. Oh, well, who knows whether they would get
not
on.
that's
Yeah,
why they have their own aviary and they
yeah,
can't get to the orchids because you know what they would do to the orchids.
yeah.
Kind of like my cats.
Yeah.
What fun. And there are so many layers to that kind of thing of the business model, the business that it was showing some of the early factors of market segmentation that
Mhm.
is recognizing that there is a big enough market that's wealthy enough, that is connected enough around hunting as well as orchids, as well as cigars or whatever the topic might be. And the customers will pay for it. And most importantly, advertisers want to reach those people, and you will be the vehicle because that's what the publishing business was an
And
advertising,
something,
the Google of its day.
yeah, something I've just remembered that I haven't put in there is that I actually managed to get a copy of somebody's subscription to the Field, I think it was. So it was their receipt for the money that they were paying to actually be a subscriber to the publication. So there's all sorts of different things out there. eBay, that sort of thing is quite a good source for
Yeah.
those sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
artifacts.
Yeah. I'm especially interested in this topic because my great grandfather was Charles Moreau Harger and an editor of a relatively small town newspaper, the Abilene Reflector Chronicle in Abilene, Kansas. The coincidence here is it's about the same time window. He took over in about
Mhm.
1888, all the way through 1955 or 54. He died at 55. He worked the whole time, 65 years, for the paper. But also, it was coincident with a young town boy who worked for him and then got him into West Point, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So, he had an in with the Prez, which was a big deal. And I'm like, wow, all those editorials and commentaries and so on. And while those are interesting, it's sort of not surprising to his politics or whatever else. And I don't really know all the details. Um, but his stories about the Old West and the changes that were happening at the period of time, this self-awareness
Mm.
about the historical transformations is actually, to me, the most interesting parts. Have you found some of those kinds of uh, personalized views of the period of time, the self-awareness about, Victoria and um, the empire and the many changes in the empire at the time?
Not really, to be quite honest. I haven't looked for those. I've been more interested in sort of the overall thing rather than what's been said in specific issues, unless there's something that stands out. Um, and some of them are easier to
I could
find
see
than
getting
others.
distracted by the talking
Yeah.
parrots.
But
Go on.
I think there must have been some fascinating conversations going on then. It's like, what do you want to include in it this month? And the people had responsibilities for different sections of the newspapers so that they would find all the articles on so and say, well, how do you choose what you're going to talk about? What's popular at that time, and why have you chosen to include it?
Oh my goodness, yes. And so, backing up a little bit as to why we're talking about all of this. You see, for those of you who are new, and I recognize several new names, welcome, welcome. It's great to see you. This is a preview of the conversation and presentation that you'll make next Thursday in our Emma Explores series. And Emma, you, of course, tell us a little bit about your background and how you go about these presentations, and then how you even pull select your topics and themes. I think that would be a good background for everybody.
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't really know me, so I'm based in England. You guessed by my accent, I live in Kent. And I've been interested in my own family history for probably 30 years on and off. So before the days of the internet, and sort of, I can remember looking and you couldn't necessarily find much in the way of records. We're now in a much better position where things are constantly being digitized. So over the years, I've done quite a lot of my own research, and I'm semi-organized. I wouldn't say I'm the most organized person. And I've got sort of different boxes with bits and pieces. I'm really fortunate that I've inherited loads of I've got letters, I've got a few heirlooms, I've got photographs, family trees, all sorts of different things. And so I've got this pool of information, and within it, I know there are lots of stories, some of which would take more effort to tell than others. So, for example, I have my great grandmother's diaries from Scotland, and these are tiny little handwritten diaries from the 1940s, 50s, 60s time, and they talk about her life. And at some point, I would like to do that, but it means transcribing them all and doing all the effort involved in doing that to then come out with something at the end of it. So what I've done is basically pick, in a lot of instances, people I'm vaguely familiar with, or it could be a tangent from something else that I've already talked about, or it could be something that I've seen in the news. When I did my last one, it was the Fonblanc family, and that was to do with the full text search. So that's something that had come out quite recently. And so when I looked for Fonblanc years ago, there was nothing out there. And then I found this book, which had all of this stuff in there. And it's like, well, I can write about that one. So it's different how I choose things.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think there'll be a really good story. So, for example, my grandfather's brother, my great uncle Charles Cox, he basically was quite into marine stuff. So he was, I think he was in the Navy in Canada at one point. He was lived out there for a while, and his wife was, I think, she's American, if not Canadian. And basically, he built a boat up in Canada, and he sailed it down to the Caribbean. And I have got a photo album and newspaper cuttings and all sorts of things talking about the building of the boat, the sailing down there, and who they
Wow.
encountered, and all sorts of things. So I thought at some point I want to do a story on him. So I've got all that
Yeah.
material, but it's a matter of pulling things together.
Yeah.
Um, it varies in terms of what I choose, and it's what appeals, really.
Yeah. Well, I always find the thematic view, I mean, it's so tempting to come into the field of genealogy and say, okay, I have to finish my tree. I always have to
We never
laugh when I
finish
hear
our
that.
tree.
That's the
Never.
secret. That's like, yeah, newbie. But you sketch out where you're interested in and you dig into more of those details, and then you park. I think of it as parking the details that I know so far with notes about what I'm not really sure of, etc. And then you're free to like dive into the details of any one of them. And each time I listen to your talks, I'm often inspired about the next thing that I can go do on my own tree. And you are so generous with the how I found this,
Mm.
where I went and how I found this. Because frankly, too many of us are like, and this is true. Okay. Whatever you say. Um, and by doing the how I found this, you're not only giving us the receipts on your own work, which frankly I wouldn't doubt anyway, but it's the and you can too. The implied and you can too. You were the one to tip me off to the richness of treasures down at Trove in Australia, and how that could apply up here to Britain. My own family, most of on my mom's side arrived almost exclusively from England, but almost all of them were in the 17th century. And doggone it, the newspaper publishing was just not good enough back then. But, so right now in reading Albion Seed, I'm having a ball going through to say, no, really, where were they from? And how did that affect things? That's so cool.
Mm, mm. I think
So
we're really
each,
fortunate at the moment. It's like more sources just seem to appear.
yeah,
I do a search for a particular family name, and all of a sudden I find there's a source on manufacturers, for example, Grace's Guide, where people actually made things. So there's so many different sources out there, and each one of them is actually digitizing more and more different things. So we are really fortunate to be in a time when that sort of stuff is available.
Yeah, absolutely. Though again, I guess there's not much we can do to change the factors of technology that limited the distributions of high-speed presses in the 17th century.
Yeah.
That's okay. We have church records. And I mean, in that particular case, it's coming to mind because of a post that I'm working on. I hope to have for release tomorrow. That was astonishing. I was doing this study about Quakers, my little Quaker family and the Quaker path that the Quakers took through the American history, and then just as an I wonder if I just happened to look and discovered that yeah, we were on the Patriot side of the that war that we had. There were three cousins, family members, not one, not two, three. One was a general, another one was an admiral, who later became a baronet, all from the same family who fought for the other side. How come we never talked about that? Huh?
Yeah.
It's like we're suddenly unshackled to go talk about these family stories and what it must have really been like for them on the inside. Right? I mean, it's just so, it's really mind-blowing to see where that is. Mama
One
Carol.
thing
Yeah.
one thing I just want to say is I'm in the process of actually transcribing one of my interviews that I did where I was talking with a gentleman by the name of Graham Holton about DNA and different things. And we were saying that there are no real secrets nowadays. There's so many things that are actually available. But equally, the things that people might have regarded as maybe something to be ashamed of or to be hidden, things like that, we don't necessarily view them as that
Right.
nowadays. We are in
Right.
some ways a bit kinder in how we look backwards
Yeah.
towards people. And so finding that information isn't so much of a shock or a scandal as someone maybe nearer in time would have viewed it.
Yeah. No, that's always, I think, a really, really important thing to keep going back and understanding, not only, that we can talk about these things today, but also to understand what their perspective is like, to get in their shoes and understand the out of wedlock birth, the, whatever their surprises were, divorce, and that as recently as the 60s and 70s was still not spoken of. Speaking for a friend. Um, and this to me, this is the kind of thing that fuels my interest is to open these stories up. Not that every story needs to be told, but that secrets can be corrosive and not every story needs to be public. I think these kinds of things, the subtlety, the nuance, like privacy, I think is foundational and very important. Mama Carol just chimed in to say to thank you for your generosity and how she's looking forward to Thursday. I think that's actually a great reminder. We try not to let our little previews get run too long, but and makes it a good place to wrap. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. It's a delight to see so many new faces, and we're always thrilled to have you come and join us. And remember, all of these programs are free, made possible by the generosity of our wonderful Projectkin patrons. You can see them all at projectkin.org/patrons. And we hold all of these programs. We love to see you live. If we can't make it live, we also record them all, almost all of them, I think, to make sure that they can be shared and engaged with. We love the comments and discussions because it helps all of us. So feel free to drop notes, ask questions, send messages, learn more about what Emma is doing with Emma Explores. Emma's own podcast she didn't mention, Journeys into Genealogy, which is a fabulous, fabulous, thoughtful and insightful podcast if you are not familiar with it. And then, of course, her own stories at Emma's Substack, right? I'll include all of these links, of course, in our in the show notes because it always lets me do a little reminder. These are my notes. for what's what. But they're always useful. Now I've got to go back and study up on the talking parrots.
I will have a link to that in the thing, so we'll be able to see that.
Stay tuned for our next exciting episode. Thank you again. Take care now. Thank you, everybody. It's so good to have you as part of this.
Thank you. See you on Thursday. Bye.
Bye bye now.